Hey guys, the Network Berg here. Hope you've been keeping well. So in this video, we will actually be doing something extremely fun where we will be combining a bit of dynamic routing using BGP with WireGuard so that we can automatically learn routes from our clients and also just bring this into our network. So this is going to be a little bit of a fun lab. I will be building everything from scratch again. Even though the topology has been set up, I'll do the WireGuard setup as well as the BGP setup so that you can see step by step what we do. So let's get into the video. So what is the main goal for me to achieve when I'm using dynamic routing protocols with WireGuard? Well, the first thing is I want the whole process to be as easy and dynamic as possible. When I advertise a range, I just want it to be pushed across the network without having to tweak a lot of stuff myself. Now, this is where issues with the allowed from addresses comes in, because you can make it work with a single WireGuard interface, but you're going to have to tweak a lot of stuff with allowed addresses the whole time, and that's not what I want. I want this to be a very straightforward setup where you advertise a route and it just pops up into the routing table and you don't even need to go into the allowed from addresses to put anything in there. But this means we need to use multiple WireGuard interfaces at a certain location. Now in this topology, I'm going to actually be doing this at site C as my central hub. This could be the DC, this could be a head office, this could be a provider edge network for an ISP, whatever you think of. But I'm going to set up multiple different WireGuard interfaces and have each interface bound to a specific client. That way I can do some very cheesy and easy things like just setting the allowed from addresses to 0000/0. And it just makes the whole dynamic setup a lot easier. The reason why we also want multiple interfaces in an ISP type of environment is if you're using stuff like VRFs, if you want to assign that WireGuard interface to a specific VRF, it can only exist in one VRF. So you're not going to be able to just share this between multiple customers. You're going to actually have a lot of issues if you try and make it work that way. You can probably do something, but the easiest thing is just to have multiple WireGuard interfaces, in my opinion. This is what I've discovered, at least with all of the different lab situations I've put myself through. Now, how are we going to set up dynamic routing? Well, personally for this lab, I'm going to be using iBGP, but you can also make this work with stuff like OSPF or even eBGP. Just note that if you do go eBGP, you might want to have various different autonomous systems for each of your remote sites. So with this instance, it's just going to make it a lot easier for us if we use something like iBGP and we just use a route reflector to learn the routes from a central point from the DC to all of the clients. Now this is going to be a simple setup. I want to run through everything very quickly. I'm going to set up WireGuard between all of the devices so you see that the WireGuard network comes up, and then we'll configure the BGP. So let's start off with that WireGuard configuration. So let's start our configuration journey on the site C MikroTik, and I'll just get onto Winbox, go to WireGuard, click on the plus. Let's give the interface a name. So I'm going to call this WG-site-A because I'm going to assign this interface to site A. I'll leave the listen port as is, and I'll just click on apply. We'll see it does generate a public key that I can use with the site A MikroTik to connect with. So I'll have to have that handy in a second. So I'll just copy this so long, and I'll hit on OK. I'll also assign an IP address to the WireGuard interface, so I can go to my IP addresses, click on the plus, and I'm going to assign the 10.0.0.1/30 address to my WireGuard interface. I could make it a /31 as well, but I'm just going to play it safe for this video and just keep it as a /30. So I'm just acting as if this is any normal VLAN interface almost. And then lastly, I'm going to go to my peers, click on the plus, use the site A interface. Since it is the only interface, that's all I can select. Public key, I'm going to need the public key of the site A MikroTik, which I'll get in a second. And let's emulate again that these are dynamic connections, so I'll leave the endpoint and endpoint port blank. However, I do need to specify an allowed address. Now, since we are doing this for dynamic routing and I want any routes to just be able to be sent across, I'm going to set the allowed address to 0000/0 from the server as well. How crazy is that? And I'm going to set my pre-shared key. I'm actually not going to set a pre-shared key. Let's keep it simple. But we will set a keep alive for 30 seconds. Now, this is just the base. Let's get onto the site A MikroTik quickly so that we can generate a pre-shared key on there, or not pre-shared key, a public key. So let's get onto site A, and then with site A, quick and easy, WireGuard, add new interface. I'll just call this WG site C. Click on apply. And I'm going to actually copy this public key now and just paste this into the configuration for the peer of the site C MikroTik. I'll click on apply. And we'll now see that it does actually start sending packets because of the keep alive, but it's not receiving anything because we haven't configured the peer on the site A MikroTik yet. So let's go back to site A. Let's quickly make sure that we have an IP address assigned to the WireGuard interface. So in this instance, it's going to be 10.0.0.2/30 to my WireGuard interface. And now what I'm going to do is go to the WireGuard, go to the peer, click on the plus, select the only interface I have available, and my server or the endpoint where I need to at least have one static connection. It could also be DNS, but if you use DNS, note that when the IP changes, you will have to either with the script or manually disable the peer and re-enable the peer for the connectivity to start working again. Because that initial connection, it will still try and reference the old IP. Just something to take note of. So in my case, in the topology, the IP address for the endpoint is 164.202.2. and my endpoint port is 13231. My allowed address on this is also going to be 0000/0, and I'm also just going to set a persistent keep alive for 30 seconds. I don't know the public key yet, so let's just grab that off of the site C MikroTik. So I'm back on site C, I'm just getting its WireGuard interface for site A, the public key, I've copied it, and we'll paste it into this. I'll hit apply, and once that's done, we should see there is a TX and RX happening, so that's very good. I'm very happy with that. And we can do a quick test to see if this works by just pinging the WireGuard IP address on the remote end. So 10.0.0.1 is assigned to the site C MikroTik. If I can ping that, I know it's working. Great. So first step done. Let's do this for site B as well. So I'm also just going to open up another Winbox session quickly, connect onto site B, and then with site B, similarly, we will add a new WireGuard interface. I'll also call this WireGuard site C. Leave the listen port as is. Click on apply. And now I've got a public key here. Let's quickly also just assign the IP address of 10.0.0.6/30 to the WireGuard interface. And I'm just going to go back to the topology again to show you I've got these IP addresses reserved that I want to use on the WireGuard interfaces. So on site B, we've done that. So let's also just go in here and add a new peer and go back to site C, where we're now going to add a new WireGuard interface. Now I'm going to click on the plus. I'm going to call this WG site B because I'm reserving this interface for site B, so it makes it a lot more easier for me to understand which interface or peer is being used for what. Now, here is why we want different listening ports. I'm going to show you something cool. If I click on apply, you'll see that the site B WireGuard interface is just down. It doesn't work. If I look at the logs, it will tell you it could not create an IPv4 socket. And it actually makes complete sense why it couldn't create the socket, because the port is already in use. Now, to get around this, we can just assign it a different port number. So I'm going to use 13232 for this now. I'll click on apply. And there you see it comes up, it's active, and now this can be used for connectivity as well. It's got a different public key as well, very important to take note of. So I can grab this new public key and I can go to the site B MikroTik and just paste it in here. Again, I need to put in the endpoint IP, which doesn't change, so that was 164.202.2, and the port is now 13232. Make sure you use the right port. And now we need to set our allowed addresses 0000/0, and my persistent keep alive is 30 seconds. Click on apply, and let's go to the site B MikroTik. We were on site B, sorry. Let's just grab this public key so long so that we can have it handy when we want to create the peer for site C. So back on site C, let's go into our peer. Let's paste the key. Let's leave the endpoint and endpoint port blank since we don't know what it is. And let's just set our allowed address. And here we're also going to use 000/0. And we can set our keep alive to 30 seconds. Now the reason we are allowed to use multiple of the same allowed address is because we're using multiple tunnels. Isn't that cool? Or interfaces. So that's been added. And I'm not seeing any. Oh, do you know what's wrong? I didn't select the right interface. So make sure that we also set the right interface, WireGuard site B, hit apply, And now we should actually see that there is traffic flowing over. I might just have to disable and re-enable the interface now for this to actually start working right. So on side B, let's check if I'm receiving any packets. There we go. So now the TX and RX is happening. Sorry, that was just a little mishap from my side. And from side B, let's quickly see, can we ping 10.0.0.5, which is the WireGuard IP for site C on its interface. Now I can't ping that for some reason. And in theory, I should be able to ping it. I actually think I don't have the IP address assigned on the site C MikroTik. Let's just see if I'm right. Yes. So let's just add the IP address as well. So 10.0.0.5/30 to site B. And if we do that ping again, it should actually work. Ta-da, there we go. All right, cool. So the WireGuard network is up between our endpoints. All three MikroTiks have WireGuard configured now. And let's just say site A and site B are acting as clients connecting to a hub, which is site C. So that connectivity is done. So how are we going to do the dynamic routing bit now? Well, we do it the same as normal. We're just going to set up BGP in this instance. I'm going to use iBGP, but like I said, you could use any number of other routing protocols or methods as well. But with the iBGP, it's pretty straightforward what we're going to do. We're all just going to use the same AS number, and we're just going to have site C set up as a route reflector so that the remote sites can also learn each other's routes and get to each other, which is awesome. So let's get back onto site C quickly. And then with site C, first thing I want to do is just go into the IP firewall and want to have an address list. Now, this address list is going to be the networks that we want to advertise out using BGP. Think of this as the network tab on version 6, but now you're doing it through the firewall address list. So I can just call this BGP out. Some people advise you to have this unique per connection or per sessions or per group. But for this demonstration, I'll just make it BGP out. And I'll just say, if you want to get to 192.168.100.0/24, it's going to be advertised out of BGP. So this is just the, think of this as the DC subnet. It is bound to a port on this MikroTik. And we can now go onto the BGP by going to routing BGP. We can create a new connection. We can call this connection to site A. We can set our AS to 65000. I can set my router ID to whatever I want. Maybe in this instance, I'll make it the WireGuard's IP address. And I can also set now the remote address, which is the WireGuard IP for the remote end, 10.0.0.2. My remote AS, I'm going to keep this as an iBGP session, so 65000. My local address, which is just my update source, I'm going to make this 10.0.0.1, which is the WireGuard IP on the site C MikroTik. I'm going to set this as an iBGP RR, so it is a route reflector. I'll set connect and listen just to be safe. And I'll go into the filter and just select the output network as the BGP out. Click on apply. And that should be it for the site C MikroTik for site A. So let's go into site A and do a similar thing. We'll go into the IP firewall. In the address list, I want to say I want to advertise out 192.168.1.0/24. So I'll add one for BGP out. And I'm going to advertise out 192.168.1.0/24. Click on apply, go into routing and BGP. And then in my connection, I can give this the name of to site C. My AS is 65000. My router ID is 10.0.0.2. My remote address is 10.0.0.1. My remote AS is going to be 65000. My local address is my update source, which is 10.0.0.2. And my role is going to be iBGP RR client in this instance. I'll also set this for connect and listen. And I'll just set output network as BGP out. Click on apply. And let's see if we have a session. Not seeing a session yet. Let's just make sure I didn't make any small mistake here quickly. And let me just make sure that I can actually still ping 10.0.0.2. We can. Sorry, I've pinged the wrong thing there. 10.0.0.1. And that I can't ping. So that is probably why this isn't working now. So let me just have a look here and see what's going on. There's a good chance I might have swapped some of the stuff around as well. This is so fun. Sorry, I know that I tend to leave these mistakes in so that you guys can see when I make a mistake how we can fix it quickly. So let's quickly fix it. Let's quickly see what's happening here. So I just want to check. I can see that my WireGuard is not working. So let's say for site A, let me just make sure I've got the right peer here. So this ends in TS equals. So let's go back here. TS equals. Okay, that's fine. That looks correct. Let's just disable and re-enable this peer as well. Might just be because of my mistake from earlier. And let's quickly check from site A, can I actually ping 10.0.0.1 now? There we go, tunnel came up now. And let's just make sure that we can also still ping it from site B. So that is very important. All right, cool, so connectivity is up. So technically the BGP should have come up now as well. And let's go to site A, look at the routing BGP sessions. There we go. All right. So there was nothing wrong with the BGP config. It was just that the tunnel was freaking out a bit, but I think it's because I had the same interface selected and I didn't disable and re-enable the site A connectivity before. So that I think that has something to do with what happened. That's the first time I've actually made the mistake now, but it happens. You know, stuff like this happens, but it's good that we can fix it. All right, but we do have a session now to our site C MikroTik. So if I look at my routing table in site C, I can actually see I am receiving a route for 192.168.1.0/24 as the gateway is 10.0.0.2. So that's perfect. Happy with that. The distance is 200, but that is because this is an IBGP route, which is normal. So let's do the same setup now for site B. So in the BGP for site C, let's just add another connection. Call this to site B. AS is 65000. Router ID, I can still leave that as 10.0.0. I can actually leave it as 1, but I'm going to make it .5 in this instance. And my remote address, I'm going to set that as 10.0.0.6, with my remote AS being the same as 65000. And my update source is 10.0.0.5. And my role is going to be IBGP route reflector. And let's just also set our output networks. Apply this, and perfect. Now we have the connection to the site B MikroTik. So we just need to do the setup on site B. So if I go into the routing and BGP, can add a connection, call this to site C again. My AS is 65000. My ID is 10.0.0.6. My address is 10.0.0.5. The remote address, what I'm connecting to. Remote AS is 65000. Local address is going to be 10.0.0.6. My local role is IBGP RR client. And I can now just set my output network. And I haven't created that yet, so let's quickly create that as well. I'm just adding the connection so long so that we have all of the relevant information already stored. But let's just go into our IP and firewall, address list, add a new address list, call it BGP out. And we want to advertise out 192.168.2.0/24. It is the IP that's bound to the Ether2 of this MikroTik. So now that I have the address list, I can reference that object in the output network for the BGP session. Click on apply. And that should be that. If we look at our sessions, it has established. That makes me extremely happy. We can see we do have some uptime here. And if I look at the site C MikroTik, very important. If I look at the routing table, I can see I am learning 192.168.1.0/24 as well as 192.168.2.0/24 from my clients. But more importantly, are my clients receiving the route? So if I look at the site A MikroTik, look at its routing table, I can see I'm only receiving 192.168.100.0/24. So how are we actually going to receive these routes from the remote side to actually start working and using this WireGuard dynamically routed network? So if I go back to my site C MikroTik, one thing I could do is actually use the redistribute function of BGP. So if I go onto the extra tab, we've got an output redistribute, and I can actually set this to redistribute BGP routes. So if I click on apply here, and I do the same for the site B MikroTik, you'll see it's got that little tick, click on apply.
if I go back to the site A MikroTik, we'll actually see I am learning the route for the 192.168.2.0/24 network, which is great, but I see a slight issue and I know exactly what's wrong and what's happening. But let's just quickly test and see if this works. Since we're learning the route, surely we should be able to get to that subnet. So if I do a ping to 192.168.2.1 from the 192.168.1.1 IP, which is my MikroTik LAN IP, what happens? Nothing. It doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, if we look at this routing table, something looks wrong here, and we can actually see that the gateway doesn't look quite right. It's telling us to get to that network we use 10.0.0.6 as the gateway. But hang on a minute, that is the WireGuard IP of the site B MikroTik, and the site A MikroTik has no idea what that IP address is. So how do we get around that? How do we fix that? Well, what I could do is on the site C MikroTik, I can actually head back into these connections, and in the attributes, the next hop choice, we can actually set this to force self. Now what does this actually do? It will tell the peer that it needs to use me, my router, the site C MikroTik, as the gateway to get to whatever routes I'm distributing or sending to my peer. So let me set this to force self for the site A connection as well as the site B connection. And if we go back to that routing table, we'll actually take note of something that would have changed. So I think I just need to actually refresh or redo the session quickly. So let's just kill the sessions, and I might just refresh here as well. And now once that's done, we should actually see that the connection comes back up, and we should, in theory, be able to get to all of the sites. We're just waiting for these things to actually finish. Let me also just clear the session on these remote sites quickly. So site A and site B. So refresh this. And if I look at the routing table, there we go. This looks a lot better. So now I can see that the gateway, well, this is site B, but if I want to get to 192.168.1.0/24, I need to go to my 10.0.0.5 gateway, my server or my hub. And if I look at site A, look at the routing table here, same concept. If I want to get to 192.168.2.0/24, I will use 10.0.0.1. So now let's test again. Let's see, can I actually ping 192.168.2.1 from 192.168.1.1? Let's see what happens. Whoa, that's crazy. So the magic has actually happened now, where we are able to dynamically push out routes across this WireGuard network through a hub and spoke type of topology via the DC, and we can get to the remote subnets. Now I'm going to show you something also that's pretty cool, and it's more of a, you don't have to do it this way, it's more of a recommendation, but what you could do is, if you used eBGP with just one other AS number, you could in essence also just push a default route down to all of the clients. But this would mean that you would have to, on your clients, like on the site A MikroTik, you would have to either have a static route or route out via your normal gateway, so your triple PoE interface or your LTE interface, or whatever static connection you're using to your hub's WAN address. So an example would be, if I want to get to 100.64.202.2, I must use 164.101.1, which is my normal gateway. So I'm going to apply that, and I'm going to show you guys something sick now, something cool. So I'm going to delete this default route out on the site A MikroTik, and if I go back to the site C MikroTik, going to the connection for site A, in the extra tab, I'm also going to do a default originate. So I'm going to say I will push out a default route to this peer or this connection. And once I hit apply and OK, and let's just also maybe just refresh this session quickly. If I go back to the site A MikroTik, you'll see I'm actually receiving a default route out via this gateway. So why is this useful? What can we actually do with this? Well, if you think about it, let's say the site C is in a DC, or it is where a firewall is, and you want to enforce stuff like web filtering or some type of DNS protection or all kinds of different things. Then you have a way to force all of the client's traffic through to the central point where it's liable to whatever you want it to do. So you can enforce whatever rules you want, whatever firewall policies,
whatever web filtering, application control if you have something like a FortiGate or some other type of next generation firewall. Really interesting and cool stuff. But this is really just scratching the surface. But I really like that we can do stuff like dynamic routing with WireGuard to achieve some type of solution like this to make our lives a lot easier. I'm going to end off the video here, but I do want to tell you there's so much more that you can do. You can definitely also do this again with OSPF or eBGP or other things. This is just scratching the surface, but it scratches at the right spot for me that I really just wanted to make a video on the subject for you guys to see and hopefully share some knowledge with you. So I hope you've enjoyed watching. I'd like to thank my YouTube and Patreon members who have been helping support the channel, even though my uploading has slowed down quite a lot. I really appreciate it, guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.